You ever walk into a place and just feel something's off, like the air's too thick, like trouble's waiting around the corner? That's how it was for Ella Mae Thompson, a 74-year-old black woman, strolling into the Food Mart on Jefferson Street in Selma, Georgia, one muggy Tuesday afternoon. For 40 years, she'd been making that same trip, dragging her little red cart, the kind with wheels that squeak like they're complaining about the heat. She was a fixture in this town, the kind of woman who carried grace like it was her birthright, who'd seen enough in her life to know when to keep her eyes forward and when to stare trouble down. Ella Mae was no stranger to hard times. Born in '51, she grew up in the shadow of the civil rights movement, marching alongside her mama, Clara, a seamstress who wore her Sunday hat to protests, and her daddy, James, a mechanic who'd drive folks to voter registration drives after working 12-hour shifts. She'd been 14 when she walked across the old Cooper Bridge, her shoes worn thin, singing, "We Shall Overcome," with a fire in her chest that no fire hose could drown. Her husband, Henry, a Vietnam vet, had been her rock, quiet, steady, the kind of man who'd hold her hand through a miscarriage and still dance with her in the kitchen to Otis Redding. Henry passed in '99, but Ella Mae kept going, volunteering at the library, teaching kids to read, and every Tuesday, heading to Food Mart to stock up for the week. This Tuesday, though, felt different. She was picking through tomatoes, feeling for that perfect give, when she caught its eyes on her, sharp, like needles. 3 boys, maybe 18, 19, loitering by the canned goods, all swagger and sneers, their phones out like they were filming a prank for clicks. Ella Mae didn't flinch, seen worse than some bored kids with too much time. But they followed her, whispering at first, then louder. "Hey, Miss Rosa, you lost or something?" One called, his voice dripping with mock sweetness. She ignored them, grabbed a loaf of bread, kept moving. "Bet she's got ration cards from the Great Depression in that bag." Another snickered, and the third, a lanky kid with a faded ball cap, laughed like he'd just won a prize. Ella Mae's heart tightened, not from fear, but from memory, the same kind of mean she'd seen in '65, when boys not much older than these spat at her for daring to walk through a white door. She reached the dairy aisle, bending to grab a jug of milk, when the lanky one, let's call him Jake, shoved her cart hard. It crashed into the shelves, milk cartons wobbling. Ella Mae turned, slow, deliberate. "Please don't touch my things," she said, her voice soft but steady, like a river over stone. Jake stepped closer, his grin all teeth. "Or what, Grandma? You gonna hit me with your cane?" The others laughed, but it was the kind of laugh that's nervous, like they knew they were crossing a line but couldn't stop. "Bet her husband's long gone," Jake added, leaning in. "What's he gonna do, haunt me?" That hit her like a slap, but Ella Mae didn't blink. She just stared, her eyes carrying every march, every arrest, every night she'd prayed Henry would come home from war. That stare stopped Jake cold, like he'd run into a wall. Then, a voice sliced through the aisle like a blade. "Hey." Deep, calm, but heavy enough to make the air still. Every head turned. There, holding a pack of chicken, stood a man built like a linebacker, bald head gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Mark Wahlberg. Yeah, that Mark Wahlberg. No cameras, no entourage, just him, looking like he'd stepped out of a movie set and into this Food Mart. The boys froze. Ella Mae's eyes flicked to him, then back to Jake, who was trying to laugh it off. "Yo, man, we're just messing around," Jake stammered. Mark stepped closer, his boots scuffing the linoleum. "Messing around? Nah, you're picking on a woman who's got more courage in her pinky than you've got in your whole crew." He didn't raise his voice, but every word landed like a punch. "I saw what you did pushing her cart, talking about her husband like you know her story. You don't. You think this is funny? She was marching for her rights when your granddaddy was still learning how to tie his shoes. She walked streets where people like you would have thrown bricks at her, and she's still here, shopping for her damn milk while you play tough for your phone." The store was dead quiet. You could hear the hum of the freezers. Jake mumbled something, but Mark cut him off. "This is a free country, right? Free enough for her to live her life, and free enough for me to call you out when you act like cowards." The other boys backed up, one slipping toward the frozen pizzas like he could vanish. Ella Mae stood still, her hands on her cart, her eyes glistening, but her chin high. Mark turned to her, his voice softening. "Ma'am, you okay?" Ella Mae nodded, her voice steady. "I've been through worse, son," but I appreciate you stepping in. He gave a small smile. Respect. My mama raised me to know better. Ella May chuckled, just a little. I can tell. She rolled her cart to the checkout, and the other shoppers parted like she was royalty, not because she asked for it, but because she'd earned it. The cashier, a young woman named Tasha, whispered, "Miss Ella, you're a legend," as she bagged the groceries. Outside, the Georgia heat had softened, the sky turning pink and gold. Ella May walked home, her cart squeaking, her step a little lighter. She didn't tell a soul, not her neighbor, Miss Lorraine, who called to gossip, not her pastor, who left a voicemail about the church potluck. But that night, sitting at her kitchen table, the Food Mart bag still on the counter, she looked out at the dogwood trees blooming in her yard and felt something shift. It wasn't just the boys' cruelty that stuck with her, it was that flicker of fear, not of them, but of the hate they carried, the kind she'd seen 60 years ago in men with badges and billy clubs. And then there was Mark, a stranger who saw her, really saw her, and didn't look away. By morning, the story had blown up, someone in the store had filmed it, and the video went viral. Movie star shuts down teens harassing elderly woman, the headline screamed. Ella May's phone wouldn't stop buzzing, her niece in Macon, the local news, even the mayor's office wanting to honor her. She didn't want the fuss, but when she spoke at First Zion Baptist that Sunday, she didn't hold back. "I've seen hate before," she told the congregation, her voice low but clear. "I've seen it in fire hoses, in jail cells, in the eyes of men who thought I was less than human. But I've also seen good like that man who stood up, not because he knew me, but because he knew right from wrong. Sometimes, standing still is the loudest thing you can do." The church was silent, some folks wiping tears, others nodding like they'd lived it too. A week later, Ella May was at the community center, unlocking the door for the kids' reading program, when she heard a voice. "Miss Ella." It was Jake, the loud one, hat in hand, eyes on the ground. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice small. "I was stupid. My grandma saw the video, made me watch it again. She said I'd better make this right." Ella May looked at him, letting the silence stretch. "You here because you mean it, or because she told you to?" Jake shook his head. "I mean it. I didn't know, I just didn't know." She nodded. "Your grandma raised you better than you acted. Don't let her down again." He nodded, almost shrinking, and walked away. Ella May stood there, her hand still warm from where she'd touched his shoulder, feeling like something had cracked open, not just in him, but in her too. The story faded from the headlines, but it didn't fade from Selma. Kids at the library hugged Ella May tighter. Cashiers at Food Mart smiled wider. And when she spoke at the high school, telling stories of marching barefoot and holding Henry's hand through tear gas, the kids didn't clap, they just listened, eyes wide, like they were seeing her for the first time. Maybe they were. Maybe we all need a moment like that, when someone steps up, not for fame, but because it's right. Maybe that's what changes things one ordinary Tuesday, one person who refuses to look away. So what do you think? Was Jake's apology enough, or does it take more to undo that kind of hurt? Drop a comment. Share your thoughts. Have you ever seen someone stand up like that, or been the one to do it? Let's talk about what it takes to make things right.